the cave. I says, where, in the middle of the desert? She says, yeah. She said, but when you find those landmarks, you're only going to find them with that one other person with you. If you go with anybody else, you won't find the landmarks. I said, well, what's the landmarks? She said, well, the cave is freestanding as I've drawn, and it's going to be mostly filled with sand, and all around the cave, there'll be skeleton bones around them. I says, human or animal? She says, I don't know. She says, but you're going to see a lot of bones, skeletons all the way around the cave. That's the landmark.
Okay.
And the other landmark, she said that the cave's not only going to have a front entrance, but there's going to be a back aperture as well. So whether the back would be the front or the front would be the back, we don't know, but there'll be two apertures in the cave. I said, that's interesting. She says, and behind the cave, you're going to see a pyramid-shaped mountain. And I thought, pyramid? Yeah, she says, sort of a pyramid. It's like a pyramid with a flattish top, but I call it a pyramid mountain, she says. I said, well, what's the other landmark? She said, the other landmark is going to be a huge, well, there's going to be a river. There's going to be two more landmarks, she said, because there's five. One's going to be a dried up river in front of the cave. She said it's dried up because years ago when the cave was there, there was a river running through there. But the fifth landmark, which is very unusual, she says, but you will find it, and it's going to be a gigantic tree from a rock. It's going to be a huge rock that looks like a tree, and that's going to be close by.
Okay.
I remember smiling when I told her, Joyce, this is going to be impossible find. She says, don't worry, you'll find it. During the workshops, I found that I had the ability to do psychometry. You probably know what it's like, holding an object like a ring or a watch that someone's worn for many years, and you pick up vibrations and information from that person. You've probably heard about that, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Anyhow, a few years after the meeting, after the meeting with Joyce, I was walking my dog up the road where we live, and a guy was building, one of our neighbours was building a wall outside, and he was standing out there, and he said his daughter's there, named Dawn, who I've never met, and he introduced me to her, but he says, on the quiet, she's a bit imaginative. She always talks about fairies and spirits, so don't take too much what she's talking about for granted. But as soon as she saw me, she wanted to talk. And she says, can I walk with the dog with you? And I said, fine, because I want to be alone. I said, okay, I'll listen to what she said. And she started looking at me and she said, am I looking for something? I said, what do you mean, am I looking for something? I'm taking the dog for a walk. She said, no, I feel that you're looking for something. And she says, something to do with King Solomon's temple. I thought, whoa, how the hell has this girl come up with stuff? It frightened the shit out of me, all due respects. Okay, so I said, well, okay, let me think about that. And she says, no, I think I want to see you tomorrow. Can I see you tomorrow? I says, fine, come to her house and come and visit me. Because it was all a bit strange to me. And the next day, she came to the house with two bits of paper in her hand. One was a drawing of the Ark and a goblet on it. And God knows why she had drawn that, but obviously she picked that up. And the other, she said, is a drawing of my spirit guide. And I looked at this drawing she did, and she wasn't a good artist, but you could see what it was. And it was a sketch, just like Joyce had done, of a guy with a lot of hair and a V-shaped beard. It was incredibly like the same one drawing that Joyce had done. And there's no way she would have known about me. She wouldn't have known about Joyce, because I've never, as I said, I've never spoken to anything about it. My neighbour didn't know, otherwise they'd have thought her crazy talking about all this stuff.
Right.
When I questioned why she shrugged it, she just shrugged her shoulders and said she felt she has to do this. In the middle of the night, she woke up and said, I've got to do some drawings for me. So I said to her, if that's my spirit guide, has he got a name? And she says it starts with the letter M, but I'm not very good at spelling. Is it probably Mulak or Malak or something? Or I said, well, word Mosek sound in it, Mosek? She says, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. That's a name. I says, you sure? She says, yeah, I knew it was something with an M, Mulak or Musik or something like that, but that sounds right to me. She was quite weird, like her father told her, but she certainly knew what she was doing.
Right.
It was quite interesting when I compared it.
I've actually seen both of those drawings because I've seen all of your paperwork and everything you've been describing. I've seen photographs of this stuff, and I got to say that those two drawings are remarkably similar.
Well, what was not only similar, but when I looked in the right eye of the one she did the exact same drawing of the peninsula in Egypt on the same eye as Mosek had. And to me, that was quite incredible.
Yep, and I've got the zoom-ins here of both eyes, of both drawings. And You're right, the peninsula is on both of them.
Yeah. She came in, she couldn't understand what it was all about because I didn't show her Joyce's pictures, but I kept everything from her.
That's very interesting. Well, carry on with the story. I'm sure there's more.
Yeah, there's quite a lot more. Well, when I say a lot more, I've written 500 pages of a book, so I'm only going to give you a little bit, so this is a bit more anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, in 1994, my wife and I visited Israel. But before we left, Joyce says, when we go to Israel, I'm going to find a very old map. I says, what do you mean an old map? He says, it would give you an idea of what you're doing, but you're going to find a very ancient map when you go there. I says, fine. Now, when we were there, we were invited for lunch by a well-known psychic in Israel by the name of Menorah. And both she and her husband Liam came from South Africa. She heard about my experiences, psychic experience, through someone I met in Gibraltar, which is where we do our shopping, about 20 miles from us in Spain. I live in southern Spain. Right. Before we went into a room that she used for meditation. She said to me, lay down on a bed. And when I looked up, above my head was a huge crystal suspended from the ceiling. And she spoke very softly, I remember, putting me into a deep meditation. And she says, this, just like Joy, she says, we have to record this. And the session was recorded on the 15th of October, 1994, by an associate named Haggett, an Israeli woman. Within a few minutes, she went into a trance and began speaking in a deep voice that there was a Mosek, and I was his agent, and the time was not right to find the Ark. And I began channeling Mosek in a crackled voice, which was something I'd done in serendipity. And I mentioned that, or whoever mentioned it through my voice, said 7 stops. Apparently, he, Mosek, and his men made 7 stops to get to the cave. Also mentioning a big tree that would be passing.
Okay.
And people should remember that, and it also come up with the words, people should remember, or this Mosek come up with the words, people should remember the 10 Commandments, and he also spoke about peace all at this session. Anyway, before completing our tour of Israel, we had another surprise. Our tour agent told us that 2 people who paid for a trip, they had to cancel 2 days before, to go to the monastery called Sinai Catherine Monastery, Monastery of the Sinai, and that's apparently where a lot of people believe Mount Sinai is, and they call it Mount Sinai, which is about a couple of miles away from there.
Okay.
Anyhow, there were about 6 other people, plus our 2 guides on this bumpy trip. We had to cross the desert. There was a road there, but we were the only people on the road, which you have to go in pairs, because if one of you break down, you're stuck. And mobile phones don't work that great easy out in the desert. We started out about 5 o'clock in the morning, but as I say, it was a bit scary because the 5-hour journey, we didn't see any other vehicles on the road except the one in front of us.
Wow.
It was traveling with us. A bit scary, but still, I mean, if we both broke down, God knows what would happen. But I had an interesting experience while walking up the uneven stone-hewn steps, which are on this Mount Sinai, where you get to the top. And the guy said, if we get to the top of this mountain, of course, we were pretty high up anyway, we're elevated where we stopped the trucks, because all sand dunes and stuff like that going up there. And she said, we're going to have a spectacular view of the sunset when we get there. But I suddenly stopped about halfway up, and I said to the guide, it's pointless for me to go. I don't want to see the sunset. I felt I've got to stay here because this is more important for me. So pick me up when you return. I said, okay. And at that time, my wife with one of the guides she didn't want to go to the top either. So she stopped a little way before us in a little place where they sell Coca-Colas and drinks like that. It was on a little kiosk there. Mm. Anyhow, I turned around on the step, and below me was a picturesque valley. And I gazed at it for several minutes and took a lot of pictures. And something made me stand up and recite out loud the Ten Commandments. And it was then that I realized that for Moses to be heard by thousands of Israelites when he told them the Ten Commandments, and they never had speakers there, how they would have done it. But all of a sudden, as I started speaking, my voice echoed loudly across all the mountaintops around me. It was quite unusual. It was like billowed back to me the Ten Commandments. So possibly, if mountain was on any mountaintop, because I say we don't know whether that was Mount Sinai or not, but any mountaintop, they say he went up a mountain according to the Bible, if he would have recited the Ten Commandments for the children of Israel to be heard, and for the mountains around, they would have, echoed around it.
Right, you'd have to have a valley in which it to echo in, right?
Yeah, and this was it. So it's quite unusual to find out how he actually did it. And that night we had to sleep in tents, and luckily it was like a little camp there where the tourists would go, and there was a little bathroom there, but there was no huts. We all slept in tents. And the next morning they gave us a little breakfast. And then we were transported to St. Catherine's Monastery, which is an ancient monastery built in the year 300. And the monks that are there were Greek monks, and they've been using that monastery for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. And we were told by the guide, she said, well, there were two guys, a man and a woman, and she said she'll have to wait outside because we should all go in there for a couple of hours or an hour, whatever it is, and take a look around and see the inside of this monastery. But it'd be pointless talking to the Greek monks because none of them speak English. So the group started walking around, and for some reason or other, God knows what, I approached one of the monks. And when I talked to him, I found out he spoke perfect English. And I hurriedly told him my interest in the Ark because we were near this monastery at Mount Sinai, so-called, wherever it was. And he said, I want to show you around.
Wow.
And he said, I'm going to take you to one of the holiest places in the monastery. He was one of the leading monks there, chief monks there. And he said, no tourists go in there, but I want to take you in there. I said, thank you very much. That'd be interesting. So when I was in there, and his back was turned, talking to Mary, and I took a few pictures. And he then said to me, I'm now going to take you to another room, which is one of the oldest libraries in the world, which was upstairs. And inside I saw a glass case with an ancient